Hello everyone, Dr. Duello here again with a presentation on personal statements for graduate school, the crash course. As I travel across the United States, I see that a lot of undergraduates applying to grad school have the same misconceptions about what this essay should be, so I'd like to address some of them in this presentation. So first, what do graduate admissions committees consider? Of course, the transcript of your grades. They're going to look at what you've taken, they're going to look at the difficulty level, and of course they're going to look at the grade. They're going to look at your graduate record exam scores. Some individuals on the committee may put a great emphasis on this score, others may put less so, look at the application more holistically. This is going to vary a great deal. They're going to look at the demonstration that you understand what a career in research is and your passion for research. Not just, I did research, I learned to critically think. How do you talk about your understanding of what a career in research is? And of course, letters of recommendation. So I'm going to break this down just a little more, and at the risk of being glib here, I'm going to say when you look at the transcripts of grades, the thing you want to remember is the best way to explain a C is to avoid it. So that's done with foresight instead of hindsight. If you have a C here, a C there, there may be a reason, very legitimate reason, whatever, but the admissions committee is going to get a lot of applications from individuals who did not have C grades. So you can't explain them away, or multiple C's at least. So the best thing you can do is avoid them. If you look on this website under undergraduate advising, there's a talk on how to succeed in college in the first 3 weeks of each semester, and what you have to do in that first 3 weeks to get organized, to be on top of it, to avoid a C, is included in that presentation. This too will sound glib, but how do you handle the GRE, the graduate record exam? I really can't give you better advice than to learn it the first time. Students come to me and they say, okay, how long am I going to need to study for the GRE? Well, if you learned everything the first time and you're doing well and you're just reviewing it, then, it's going to take X amount of time. But if you did poorly or you didn't understand it real well, then clearly it's going to take more time to try and remediate that when you're studying for the GRE exam. So the best advice again is to go back to how to succeed in college in the first 3 weeks of each semester and look at what you need to do early in the semester to determine that you're going to do well. The best way to explain that you have an understanding of a research career and you're passionate about it is to talk about your research experiences and to talk about them really richly. Sound like a scientist, not a kid who spent a summer in a laboratory and just kind of occupied a space at the lab bench. Show your enthusiasm, talk the science, talk about what you did. So in order for us to understand that, it's how you write about research in your essay. And again, very richly, and I'm going to discuss this. Letters of recommendation, that's a whole nother talk about who should write letters for you. Definitely your research advisor, professors in courses that you have done well. Oftentimes students say, oh, well, the TA really knew me well. Well, we're not just looking for a personality commentary. I really recommend you go to the professor. The professor will talk to the TA and say, so-and-so took my class and did X in speaking to the TA, etc. Not everybody agrees with me on this, but usually the professor has name recognition, so that's why I recommend that. So when you do personal statements, there are different kinds for different purposes. The ones that you do for summer research, the ones that you do for graduate school, and maybe different yet, indeed different yet, if you're applying for an MD, PhD. The difference about summer research is that what you want to say you have someone who's done 2 different research projects already and summer research. Well, if you just say I did this and then I did this and now I want to do this, then I'm going to sit there and think, well, they've had opportunities. Maybe I should give somebody else a chance. So when you're talking about summer research, give me a reason for why you need this other opportunity. Not just I want to do number 3, but I've never had a chance to do computational biology. I've never had a chance to do engineering, whatever. Give me a reason. As I'm going to talk in a little bit, the ones for graduate school and the MD PhD have a great deal of overlap, but in the MD PhD one, you're definitely going to have to talk about your experience in medical settings that lure you to be an MD as well. So these personal statements, they're not what you have done in the past. They're not an essay for summer camp. You did that in high school. It's not an essay for a creative writing course. And not all of it is scientific writing, but part of it is. So when you think about this personal statement, the thing that I want to throw in is not to take your middle school understanding that this is just a story. Oftentimes, people go to what they were taught in middle school, actually, which they also did in high school. They tell a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a theme. Think of this as a report. The part about your motivation for science may be like a story, but think of it as a report, a professional report to the admissions committee. So one of the things that students say to me is, how important is this essay? They want to know how much it quote-unquote counts. And I put that in parentheses because sometimes students think like there's a point system. You're going to get 10 points for this and 10 points for this. And if you end up with 60, you're admitted. I assure you it doesn't work that way. But let me tell you this about the essay. There are going to be other applicants who have your grades. There are going to be other applicants who have your GRE scores. There are going to be other applicants who have had great research experiences at their home institution or somewhere else, and great letters of recommendation. So when all other issues are equal, the personal statement becomes even more important because it is your remaining opportunity to shine and show what your new unique virtues are. So why should they pick you over someone well? That's why how well you write is critically important. If you think well and write well, we know you think well. If you think well but you don't get it into words, we don't know that. So the big challenge also is, what are you going to write about and how are you going to write about it? So it's really important first to get organized, and we're going to talk about that. But I want to go a little bit more first into just the whole concept of how you write about research. So students are drawn sometimes, it's human, it's normal to say, well, what do I want to say? What do I want them to know about me? But actually there are things that the admissions committee needs to hear. And what you want to know is whether you're thinking like the admissions committee. And quite frankly, I'm here to tell you that, okay? So the scientific method is a way to think. It's analytical thinking, it's deductive reasoning. If you write about your research and say, I did protein crystallography, this will help people become well, I have no idea what that means. So you have to speak and write like a scientist. What did you do? What did you find? And why is it important? Everybody sitting on this admissions committee is a scientist. So any scientist, you tell me something, I say, well, how'd you do that? What were your findings? I can't tell you how many students leave out the findings. That's the most interesting part. Also here, for those who are interested in an MD, PhD, the scientific method teaches analytical thinking, which is also the basis of differential diagnosis. So I can't tell you how many medical students, pre-med students I've advised, and they say, well, I don't want to put in about my research because I don't want to be a scientist. Well, you better be a thinker. And what the scientific method teaches is analytical thinking, and that is the basis for differential diagnosis. So even if research isn't required for a med school application, it tells me that you have learned something very critical about how to think. When you write about your research experience, they're going to ask you how are they relevant in preparing you for your professional or graduate degree. Now, maybe you've done basic science research. Maybe you did clinical science, public health, community-based, participatory. All of this is good. One of the rules in writing these is you never say anything negative. You don't say, I did basic science and I didn't like it, therefore. I didn't like clinical science, therefore. All of this contributed to your education, so you just move on. You did basic science, clinical, public health, and instead you say, I sampled all of these to have an overview, not I didn't like something. That's not the way you want to do it. So again, so many students say, I did research, this was the title of my poster, I got to go to San Antonio to a meeting. Think about that. That tells me absolutely nothing about your preparedness for graduate school. And if you just say, I really want to be a scientist, if you take that approach, you're asking them to just believe you, to take your word for it. Okay? So what you want to do is talk about your research in such a rich manner that it demonstrates your thinking, your problem solving, etc., and it demonstrates these attributes. You give them the data and you let them draw the conclusion. Not, I'm very well prepared, this is what I've done. Not, I know how to troubleshoot, show me in the way you describe your science. So everybody on the admissions committee is really, really smart. They're scientists. Give them the data, let them draw your conclusion. They're not just willing to take your word without any data to convince them. So how to start here is I have produced a polished CV, curriculum vitae, or a hybrid. Not all of you know what a curriculum vitae is. A resume is a document that summarizes relevant job experience in education. Officially, resumes are considered 1 to 2 pages. They're summaries. If you submit a resume to something, you don't get hired on the basis of that summary. You're interviewed, they collect more information. A curriculum vitae is a complete summation of your professional life, okay? It has no page limit. And I have my freshmen and my sophomores create curriculum vitas, and then what they have to do is tell me, what do you want on that by the time you graduate? So you plan your CV with foresight, not hindsight. Right now you may have a resume. It's going to change in parallel with your advancement through your educational system, and you're going to end up with a curriculum vitae. Right now, you may have, in college, you may have a section on relevant coursework, something like that, which you may or may not take off later. You are going to have things, maybe your freshman, sophomore year, that you did in high school, but by your junior year, all of that comes off because you will have done much more important things, and high school is long in the past now. So let me convince you why you actually need a curriculum vitae. Well, first off, it has a great ability to just help you organize yourself. You see what you have done. You can talk to professors and others about what needs to be there. So again, you use foresight instead of hindsight. It helps you plan your career path. You may have some career chosen that you really want to do, but I recommend everybody have a plan A and a plan B, and then plan in parallel. You know, if you do plan A, fantastic. If you decide to do plan B, you've planned for that one as well. Or maybe you're going to do B now and A later, whatever. So it helps you plan. When you ask somebody to help you write your personal statement or to advise you, you give them that, and they see the best way for you to present yourself with what you've done. You also give this CV to whoever you're asking for a letter of recommendation, because I can always write a better letter if I know even more about the student. I may say they took my class and this is how they did, but in speaking to Philip, knowing that he's doing X, Y, and Z, I see Q, R, and S. I can write a better letter. And because you're going to need this document for the rest of your life, you are going to add to it constantly, and this is a document you will keep for the rest of your life. So this is a website, undergradadvising.com, that I put up a few years ago. It has 3 categories: undergraduate advice, pre-health advice, and pre-grad advice. This is what it looks like, and if you go here under undergraduate advice, advice for everyone, you're going to see that there's a video up there right in the middle on how to convert a resume to a curriculum vitae, and right below that it says Duello Hybrid CV Template. It's a Word document. You can download it. You can erase what I have written and put your information in, and you will have good formatting. I use this particular format because it's what faculty use at my university. I like students to do it as if they were a faculty member, because then when somebody looks at that, they go, my, sophisticated, way ahead of the game. Just because I'm on this page, you can see at the bottom too that I have the all-important elevator speech. And I'm going to jump in with that for just a minute here. So what you see, what is the elevator speech? So say you've gotten to go to a great conference and you're at the conference center, or you're all staying at the hotel and everyone's waiting in front of the elevator. And someone looks at your name tag and says, oh, I see you were, at the University of Wisconsin. This is a research conference. What do you do? Now, if you haven't thought about this and you don't have something clear and concise to say, you may stutter and stammer, and just about this time the elevator opens and you're all getting on and you say, well, I work with Dr. Smith, and we were wanting to do, it's on 2nd floor, 3rd floor. The professor gets off on 4th floor and you haven't communicated what you do. So what you do is you write that elevator speech. It is 4 or 5 sentences. You memorize it. It's in the back pocket on your hip, and practice this on each other. When somebody says, are you conducting your research? You say, yes. I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Teresa Duello in obstetrics and gynecology, and she studies low birth weight and infant mortality. This is what we're doing. This is what we found. This is why it's important. Okay? 5 sentences. Who you worked with. Professors have first names and last names. They have departments. You had the opportunity to work with someone. Don't forget the scientist. Excuse me. What's the broad focus of the research? Low birth weight and infant mortality. You can really do this in 4 to 5 sentences. Everything in science is clear, concise, lucid. I can name that tune in 5 notes. This is not just techniques. You are not applying to be a technician. If you say, I did research, I learned southern blots, western blots, northern blots, that isn't going to make me want to admit you if you don't tell me the science. And actually, when you come into my lab, I'm going to teach you western blots in 1 afternoon. So it's not that you know all of these techniques. It's good, but that's not why we're going to admit you in the final analysis. So for graduate school, this is kind of the essay that I recommend. And I said step 1 is to produce a polished CV. Step 2, I say write an outline for the essay. And this does not have to be Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2. It can be words, phrases, short sentences, whatever you want. You want an introduction, and you want an introduction to catch the eye and make them keep reading. So it's not, I was born in da-da-da-da-da. No, not milquetoast, something interesting. Oftentimes about how you got interested in science or how you got interested in a disease process that you're studying. So that sentence may be like a story, but the rest of it isn't. One of the things is the application has your institution, your transcript, all of that. But I like to have just students do name dropping here. So this got you interested in science. Then you had the opportunity to attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where you had the opportunity to conduct research with Dr. Teresa Duello, who does X, Y, and Z. you're going to spend a lot of time and most of your space talking about your research very richly. You may or may not put extracurricular activities in. Okay, this is not, I'm on soccer team, I was on debate. If you're gonna, because you need the space for the science, if you're gonna put in extracurricular activity, it's probably gonna be science related. Maybe an honor society, something like that. But this is not Facebook, and this is not a chat about everything that you have done. You are selling the admissions committee on the fact that you understand what a research career is and you're passionate about pursuing them. Here at the bottom, I'm going to talk more about this in a couple slides, but when you're talking about this, you don't end an essay and say, therefore I'm applying to your program. You want to say why you and this program are a great match, whose work you're interested in. It's not a contract. You want to show them you've done some homework. Who are the profs there? What have they done? Who are you interested in? And a great concluding paragraph that maybe is what you would like to see yourself doing in 5 years. As I said, this is going to be a little bit different if you're applying to an MD, PhD. You have to love science the way we all do if you want a MD, PhD. It's not I dabble in medicine, I dabble in research. You're going to have to be passionate about research as well. So definitely you're going to write about your research experiences in the same way. You're definitely going to have to talk about your medical health community setting experience because you are trying to convince the admissions committee that you really understand what a career in medicine is too. You may or may not have time for extracurricular activities, but kind of the same with the concluding paragraph. So going back to the one for graduate school, research experiences, you know, we'll talk more about that, but definitely talk the talk, walk the walk. You are a scientist. What did you do? Why did you do it? What did you find? We absolutely want to know your findings. So now, again, what I was saying is students really have trouble with the last part of this. And way too often, I see people who have just gotten to the end and said that, you know, now I'm applying to your program and my big goal in life is to get into graduate school. No, your big goal in life is to be through graduate school, to be a scientist, to practice, okay? So it's hard, you know, it's difficult, it's a lot of work to decide where to apply, which programs to apply to. If you want help with that, send me an email on this website. Whose work you're interested in. So how do you find out about this institution? You can go to a particular program and look that up, but how do you flatter them? How do you know you're a great match with this institution? So a great way to find out about what is unique about this institution is to go to its homepage and just search centers or institutes. We all have similar departments of biology, chemistry, physics, English. But what we do is oftentimes we create something new, very interdisciplinary, and we call it a center or an institute. And this is a great way to get great information about any particular university. If you look here, what this is an example. It's the centers and the institutes at the School of Medicine and Public Health at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So at the top, a cancer center, cardiovascular research center, sleep medicine research, on and on. You go down about 8, 9 there, and you have an Institute for Clinical and Translational Research. At some point in time, a couple of decades ago, someone sat down and figured out that it was an average of 17 years from a discovery to its application. Well, that's clearly too long. So the whole point of translational research is to speed the discoveries in the laboratory and their path to application in the clinic, and then actually to speed the application from the clinic to the public, the patient, the community, etc. So an Institute for Clinical and Translational Research exists here. If you look the second from the bottom, we have Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery. And that's one of the jobs of that institute, is to speed this discovery. So great way to get information very, very quickly about why we're famous. Going back to this, I'm going to keep hounding on this, is that when you write when you speak and when you write in your essay, you need to be able to speak about your research very well, clearly and concisely, whether it's the elevator speech, whether you're introducing yourself to someone in the hallway, or actually writing the paragraphs here. This is still going to be the issue. What did you find? What did you do? What did you find? And why is it important? Excuse me. So my experience is that a lot of students have a tough time with this. It's because it's a different type of writing. You probably haven't learned to do exactly this. What you have learned is maybe how to do narrative, how to do rhetorical, some scientific writing. When I tell students about how they want to do this, they oftentimes say, I didn't know. Well, it's because we haven't taught you this. And what you really need to know is not just how to learn across college courses, but how to learn to write across your career, okay? So every 4 years, your writing should be 4 years more sophisticated. The writing that got you from high school to college will not get you into grad school. The writing that you do even for grad school will not get you into a postdoc or a job. Every 4 years, you're 4 years older, you've been a professional 4 more years, you need to be 4 more years sophisticated. Plus, what I try to do with the students I help is to try to even get you to write 4 years more sophisticated than you are, so that the committee really goes, wow, okay? This takes work. It takes a lot of practice. Part of the reason I have this website up and part of the reason I'm doing this presentation is because very much of what I learned, I did not learn until my 30s or my 40s, which is why I want to give you that information now. One of the challenges, how do you brag and appear modest? And actually, my experience is that the students who worry about bragging excuse me, don't need to because they're already so modest that they probably undersell and understate than go too far. But one of the things that I find useful is that what you do is you attribute the honor to someone giving it to you. You were honored, you were chosen, you were selected, you were included. You attribute the honoring to someone else. So for all of you out there who have belonged to an undergraduate research program, minority access to research careers, RISE, PrEP, all of these programs and that, you are honored to be selected to be in there, okay? Now, when you're also writing about your research, you may have had 2 and 3 research experiences, and you don't have to say, I did mark and this was the benefit and this was the benefit. You can write about your research and then have a paragraph that collectively says, you know, that that these are all the things that were best about that. If you're in an undergraduate research program and you say so, we can make all kinds of safe assumptions about the fact that you were taught critical reading of the literature, that you were taught presentations, that you were taught many of these things. So you were honored, and then after you talk about your research collectively, being in this program and these experiences have benefited you X, Y, and Z. You don't have to do that with every research project. You can talk about it collectively. So how do you address problems? Students ask me this quite a bit, and usually you can't find much information about it. Say you had problems your entire freshman year. You came to college and found out you can't party all the time. Or maybe you got a C in organic chemistry, or maybe you needed to take a leave of absence, something like this. Oftentimes I will tell students not to put it in their essays at all, to let it come up under an interview or another situation or whatever. But my rules are that whenever you talk about something, you can explain, you never apologize, Okay, not for weaknesses, unusual aspects, or applications. You may say there may be a discrepancy between your GRE and your GPA. Maybe you had a second job, but what you'll learn to do is write uphill. Everything is a success story, okay? What happens, you were challenged, you overcame the problem, and you succeeded. You write uphill, you write with motion. It's short, sweet, it's on and off the topic, and you're not apologizing, you're telling a success story. Now there's some of you who get up to that pinnacle, and maybe you're talking about research or something, and then at the end of the paragraph you change the point. You start diluting it. So you're going all the way up to the top of this pinnacle. It's like saying, and we cured cancer using Western blots. Okay, so when you get to the peak, stay there. Don't dilute it by talking on about something else less significant. Okay, that's an important point. One of the things I've learned over my career, in which you can learn in time too, is how to plant questions you hope to be asked in an interview. So one of the things that happens is students have maybe had 2 and 3 different research experiences. I've had students who showed me essays, and what they did was they wrote 3 sentences about everything and ended up saying nothing significant about any of them. It was like a laundry list, and it didn't end up with enough information for me to want to admit them. So you can say, I had multiple opportunities to conduct research, from clinical to basic to community, only 2 of which I'll discuss here. Now when I, on the admissions committee, see only 2 of which we'll discuss here, then I'm going to look elsewhere in the application or when I interview and say, tell me about the rest of these. You can also do this in your PowerPoint presentations. You plant the questions that you want asked. That works very well. So if you're stuck trying to get started, first off, absolutely do the CV. Write an outline, even if it's very short. Again, it doesn't have to be the Roman numerals. You just need to get started. And write whatever is easiest first, okay? Write a phrase, change the phrase into a sentence, take the sentence and expand it into 3 sentences, you have a paragraph. Go back and look at the elevator speech. There's your research paragraph. You worry about good paragraphs first. You have to get the content right before you worry about word counts or transitions. Oftentimes on grad applications, they won't designate that it has to be 1 page or how many characters. My opinion is that you don't go over 2. Most do 1 page or a page and a half, but more words aren't necessarily more convincing. As I say, everything in science is clear, concise, lucid, to the point. Okay? Once you have a draft, read through it and say, would I admit me? Okay? Think about what would make you the unique applicant. I tell students all the time to go through a draft and underline every reason you believe you gave the admissions committee to admit you. And you only get to underline it once. You don't get to say the same thing 3 times. Then go through it again and highlight those reasons why they should pick you over someone else. And believe me, that's very difficult, and it's because it's very hard for the admissions committee too. But what is there about your application that makes me go, wow, I want to see him in my her in my graduate program? So if we go back to my website again, here I have pre-grad advice as well. That's the big button here on the lower right. And when you look at it, what you'll see is here at the bottom, whoops, maybe this is under undergraduate advice. I have, or no, I think it's under both. I think it's under undergraduate advice and pre-grad advice. I have an outline for the grad school essay, and that's basically what I just presented to you here, but a little longer. This is just one way to do it, but it will give you some structure perhaps and help you get started. So, absolutely, you have to plan on this essay requiring multiple drafts. If you think you're going to start 3 or 4 weeks before the application deadline, I strongly recommend you start much earlier than that. I go all over the United States teaching writing and trying to help students what I call write for success here. What is clearly apparent to me is if you don't have training as a writing, trying to become a great writer in 6 to 8 weeks before an application deadline is not the best way to go. So start early, use multiple drafts, definitely have it read by your professors or people who have actually served on an admissions committee. I understand it is much, much more comfortable to go to friends, to go boyfriends, girlfriends, anybody, whatever. I once had a young man come in and he gave me his essay and it was very, very, very bland. And I was trying to be very politic and ask him how he'd gone about working on it. And I turned to him and I said, has anyone else had the opportunity to look at this? And he said, my mom and my girlfriend. So then I developed the rule, not someone who loves you. They already think you're great. They're not your best critic, okay? So definitely a prof, somebody close, very close to the topic. I hear students say, well, all you need is an English prof and a grad student or a postdoc. Well, I'll tell you, English prof may not know everything about graduate school in the STEM sciences or what our admission committee wants to know. A graduate student may have 2 or 3 years experience. A professor may have 20 to 30. You make the pick. When somebody said, do it this way, they may have been admitted, but it doesn't mean they know that their application was perfect or what the strengths and the weaknesses were, because there are a multitude of other ways to write it. I caution you in the same way about picking graduate programs. Great universities, great programs. Which programs will look best on your record with your grades and your GRE scores? And again, email me at this site if you'd like more information about that. Had a situation just a year ago where there was a student who at another institution who had applied to graduate school, and the director of his program made recommendations that he apply here, here, and here. He met with me and I recommended that he apply here, here, and here. And actually, because his research was very interdisciplinary, there were a number of different routes to go that were really great. Instead, the individual applied to only immunology programs, only in the state in which he resided, and he wasn't admitted to any of them. And we went back to him and said, why? You don't have to take our advice, but we're really curious. Why did you not? And they said, well, I gathered all of this advice, but the postdoc in the lab told me only to apply it to immunology. And I'm positive that the postdoc's intentions were golden, but a postdoc has 4 years of graduate school, and a professor has 30 years at the bench. So think long and hard about who you should be taking advice from. So again, if you have questions, you can write me at this email address. This is the same email address that the emails on this website go to. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, write me. If there's information that's missing, write me, because I can go back and incorporate it and hopefully make this more beneficial for all of you. Take care. Dr. Duello here. Bye-bye.